How about a Coppola quick facts?
As I mentioned earlier, a bunch of different people did uncredited work on this, including Quentin Tarantino, Jonathan Hensley, and Aaron Sorkin. Aaron Sorkin. They were like,
really?
Reach out to Aaron Sorkin to do a rewrite on The Rock.
Let's punch up the president's dialogue for that one scene.
Yeah, probably.
Make the politicians seem more believable.
Also, the avoiding rape in the showers scene.
I feel like that was a
Tarantino.
Yeah.
Beach getting raped in the shower.
Getting feet fucked in the
say
shower.
it, Sean Connery. Producer Don Simpson was largely responsible for creating the critical General Hummel character, which I feel like is really kind of the linchpin of this movie. Is like you actually kind of empathize with General Hummel through the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's actually a good antagonist that we don't really see in these kinds of movies. Like he actually has real character motivation and actually turns out to be kind of a good guy in the end.
Yeah.
It's like a reverse heel turn. He's a bad guy that turns kind of good.
Yeah.
But
Well, he comes to his senses, I guess, and
right. It's like he was never really bad in the first place, I guess.
Yeah. He was never really planning on doing these things, as we'll talk about as we do the breakdown, but like, even threatening it is pretty messed up. But, he had to take extreme measures since the government was not doing anything for it.
And having somebody like Ed Harris play that character just made it even more well-rounded. He
adds so much more gravitas to that.
He's so good at like really filling out characters like that and giving them depth.
Ed Harris is a very underrated actor, I feel like.
Oh, yeah.
Even though I think he's got, 3 Oscar nominations.
Mm-hmm. Did he win anything for Westworld?
I don't know. He might have.
I can't remember. He should have, man. He was.
I feel like there was some Golden Globe nominations.
Yeah.
Maybe some Emmys, but especially that first season, he was great in that.
God, he was so good.
Pollock too. If you ever watched that Jackson Pollock biopic, he's so good in that movie. Simpson had watched a 60 Minutes segment about the U.S. government's refusal to acknowledge soldiers who had died during covert overseas missions, and later read Colonel David H. Hackworth's memoirs, which harshly criticized U.S. planning during the Vietnam War. He combined these elements into Hummel's character and, as Jonathan Hensley described, created a really compelling villain, a soldier with a noble end, but unfortunately psychotic means. And then this film, of course, is dedicated to producer Don Simpson, who died during production, sadly. And I believe Con Air was dedicated to him as well.
Yeah, I think so too.
Which he would have been pissed about.
Yeah, that's interesting because if you guys haven't read anything about Hackworth, he was very successful in the army, especially during Vietnam. And then when he got out, like really gave it to the government about how they handled things, to the point where he left and ended up living in Australia, I believe, for the rest of his life because they were not too thrilled with him being outspoken about the Vietnam War and how they mishandled and fumbled the fucking thing. But he's got like 2 memoirs that are
definite
really
inspiration for Hummel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's how we treat our heroes in America.
Yeah. So that's pretty interesting. It adds a little more depth to that character too, bringing stuff like that into it.
Very rare to see a well-rounded antagonist in any of these movies. They're usually just evil for the sake of being evil.
Yeah.
Producers Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer had decided they were going to dissolve their partnership when the production of this movie finished, mostly due to Bruckheimer taking issue with Simpson's drug abuse problems. Simpson, however, died of drug abuse-related heart failure during this movie. I wonder if like the stress of making this movie, drugs, and his tumultuous relationship with Jerry Bruckheimer kind of led to what ended up happening. I also don't think that he saw Cage as like an action star for whatever reason. I feel like Cage can kind of do anything, really. We've seen, you can kind of put him in any type of movie and he'll float to the top.
And even this, like you said before, he wasn't the action star. He was like the sidekick, really, to Sean Connery. Sean Connery was the one doing the majority of the action. He was blind firing a pistol horribly into the fucking air.
One thing, like, I feel like it's a nonstop trope in these types of movies is taking the geeky character and everybody just makes fun of him the whole time. But I feel like they did end up giving him respect from the chemical side of things, but not so much from him, helping them in any kind of way outside of defusing the bombs.
He's useless.
Which is, it's great that he just shows up to this and he's automatically like, good at it.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. He doesn't just become like a weapon expert halfway through the movie.
Which happens in tons of movies where they take the geeky scientist and suddenly they're just like getting headshots on every
Chuck.
The late great Tony Scott was originally supposed to direct this movie, but turned it down to direct The Fan. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but that one's pretty great. De Niro becoming an obsessed fan, and he gets pissed off at Wesley Snipes is like a Barry Bonds-esque player. Tony Scott I feel like he's one of those directors who really added intelligence to the action genre. Like Ridley Scott kind of skirts the line back and forth, but Tony Scott really kind of made great action movies that were actually engaging and intelligent.
And they were grounded. For action films, they were actually grounded. Like you compare a Tony Scott film to a Michael Bay film, and they're vastly different. One's like written by a scholar. The other one's written by a 5-year-old in his
It's like Michael Mann, Michael Mann movies are very like grounded and intelligent and thought out. Whereas a Michael Bay movie.
And then he gets in one of those carts and the railroads and shoots.
It's a fucking minecart sequence for some reason.
We'll talk about that extensively once it comes up. I would say Ridley Scott and Tony Scott, best directing duo aside from the Coens, in my opinion. I would say, like, if you look at the body of work of Tony Scott and Ridley Scott, it trumps anything that the Russos have done up to this point. I mean, the Russos might get there, but they're not there yet. This is a recurring thing in these 3 movies that we've done, the Holy Trinity. Arnold Schwarzenegger was offered the role of John Patrick Mason. But at the time, the script was only 80 pages with a lot of handwriting and scribbles, and it didn't seem fully baked. In a Reddit AMA, he stated that he regretted not taking the role. I mean, Sean Connery, dude. You're not going to... Sean Connery is what makes this movie good, I think.
It would have been hilarious to see Arnold in that role.
Fuck the prom queen.
It's getting gang raped in the showers.
It was Nicolas Cage's idea that his character would not swear. I'm guessing there weren't a ton of actual swears, Nigel.
Nah, there was a couple, but I gave honorary mentions to a-hole. Because it's in the intro,
but he his euphemisms include gee whiz, a-hole, Zeus' butthole,
friggin'.
Friggin'.
For a second, I thought, did I somehow manage to get like a TV friendly version? Because I forgot that he doesn't.
It's
swear.
funny because my Cage curse alarm would go off a couple of times where I'd be like, he's gonna swear.
Yeah.
Like I said, I mentioned before, you can kind of tell where he's building up to it, but he'll say like friggin'.
Yeah. Then he says friggin'.
Something. Yeah.
It was funny that
PG.
you mentioned that it feel like it might have been trimmed down or like edited in some way, because like there's the scene with I don't remember his character name at all, but I just call him Candyman throughout the breakdown because he was Candyman. He like starts to say shit like 3 times during the final fight between him and Cage, and it cuts it off. So I wonder if they just like got over a limit or something.
I actually rewound it because I thought I missed a curse in that scene because I wasn't. But it was like, oh no, Candyman was the one that said it.
Yeah, I think they do. It off
maybe they cut it off because it has more effect when he actually says, "Do you know how that shit works?"
Yeah,
They probably cut out the other ones because it it wouldn't be as funny if he had been saying shit previous to that.
Doesn't Cage say it in that too?
Yeah, he says it after he kills him, I think, which is why it's funny. Like, I think they may have cut it out of the other earlier instances because of that line, to make that line work a little better or hit a little harder.
Apparently, Michael Bay was not a fan of the Zeus's butthole line, but Cage insisted on having it in there.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, but you're not going to say
definitely
no to
felt
Cage.
like that whole scene was like this is a Cage improv, 100%.
Yeah.
It's kind of out of character and
Yeah.
Gave me Bad Lieutenant vibes when he's like going off on the old ladies.
You fucks, I hate you both. Reportedly, Sir Sean Connery, because he was knighted, accepted the part of Mason after learning that Nicolas Cage had been cast as Goodspeed. So
Really?
Oh,
we can thank
that's pretty
Nick Cage
awesome.
for bringing Sean Connery into this movie.
That's
I
respect.
felt like they
right
had
there.
really good chemistry between the two
they
of them
do,
throughout. I kind of wish that they had done something else together, because they were really great. I'd love to see just a buddy cop movie with the two of them. Sean Connery insisted the producers build a cabin for him on Alcatraz, as he didn't want to travel to the mainland every day. It's literally like a 15-minute ride.
yeah.
That's too much time, dude.
I guess. But he got what he asked for, and they built him a little cabin on the...
Figure that, or they put him in the Fairmont the whole time.
Yeah. I mean, that would make sense. That's where Sean Connery should stay.
He's such an interesting guy.
He's a weird guy.
He may have just wanted to say he got to live on Alcatraz for a month or whatever.
Maybe, yeah.
You know.
Well, it's funny because they had tours going on the whole time that they were there.
Oh, this is Sean Connery's cabin.
There's Sean Connery's cabin over there.
Hello, welcome.
I talk
Welcome
about
to the
it.
Rock.
I talk about it at some point in here that he went golfing during production, like almost every day. So it's like, what's the point of like staying on the frickin' island? I don't know.
Build me a golf course on Alcatraz.
Right in the prison showers.
Coming through. 4.
This is a recurring conspiracy theory, which is very famous on the internet. There's several theories that Sean Connery's character is, in fact, an older version of his own James Bond character. However, since Sean last played the Agent 007 in the unofficial Bond movie Never Say Never Again, the time setting of this movie would have to be 2013. With John Patrick Mason being 83 years old. So,
Yeah.
But
Because they mentioned he was locked up in 1963, I think, at some point.
Yeah. Arguably, Never Say Never Again is not part of the official James Bond canon. It was the guy who originally wrote Dr. No got temporary control of the rights and did that one movie that is, it's okay. It's not one of the best Bond movies, but
Yeah.
it was the last time, you know, it was cool to see Connery come out of retirement and do it, but Moore was already Bond and like had been Bond for a minute, you know, so.
It's like the official 4 Connery movies were Dr. No, Russia with Love, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, Thunderball. Thunderball was in 1965. So you could kind of fudge it and be like, yeah, he was that version of Bond, you know, he was arrested in 63 and Thunderball took place in 63 or whatever.
Yeah.
Or you could say it was, you know, it was the From Russia with Love version of Bond that got arrested and those other 2 movies didn't happen. You could make it work. I choose to believe it because it makes the movie a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah. Independent research shows multiple ties that can be interpreted to support the James Bond theory. And by ignoring the unofficial film, the timelines match perfectly, according to IMDB here. This theory is possibly debunked in the scene where General Hummel refers to John Mason as sailor, and John Mason corrects him by saying it's Army, actually. James Bond was in the British Navy.
Right.
Or was he?
Or was he?
But yeah, I mean, he's already going by the name John Mason. Maybe he's just...
Yeah.
He's a secret agent. He could be lying.
Exactly. Yeah, I choose to believe it because it's a much better send off for Bond or Connery's Bond. Than Never Say Never.
I also like to imagine Bond breaking out of prison and then going to a Led Zeppelin concert and hooking up with some random woman.
Some random chick.
Before getting caught and then arrested again and thrown back into prison.
Yeah.
Because it's funny.
It's funny that that's like what he chose to do when he broke out of prison.
Yeah.
He's a rocker through and through, dude.
Yeah. Check out some of this rock and roll music. Think he put on some grunge tapes after he CDs after the rock?
I would hope so.
What is this grunge?
It's pretty dope.
If this movie was made today, that would be the after credits scene. Is be him listening to some grunge in Seattle. Yeah, hanging out with his daughter,
shooting heroin.
We've talked about this extensively online, but Ed Harris pointed out that he worked with Michael Biehn in The Abyss, saying that experience bound us a lot, or that experience bound a lot of us together, almost like being in a war of some kind, because James Cameron was basically just a nightmare to work with. And I've heard that he's a nightmare to work with in general. He's just a real asshole who likes to push people's buttons to get performances out of them. But like he almost drowned people several times,
including Ed Harris,
on The Abyss. And like, I don't know how you just don't quit. Like after he did something like that, like he was like pounding on the window, like don't like, stop filling the water into my suit because they were drowning pretty much. But, whatever. In Hollywood, you could just do whatever you want to the actors. Yeah, they're under contract, so, Ed Harris would also end up being the antagonist to Nick's protagonist in National Treasure Book of Secrets, which I'm excited to do that one because I don't remember a damn thing about that movie. It has something to do with the Lincoln assassination and John Wilkes Booth and Civil War gold or something. I don't remember exactly, but it'll be good to rewatch. Michael Bay heard from James Cameron once that various crew members had told him the two are very similar on set. That's something you want. Jerry Bruckheimer says Cameron's a total asshole when he's working and asked Michael Bay why he'd want to emulate that. Bruckheimer said, for some reason, he liked the image of being like the tough guy, the guy with the whip, the yeller and screamer, but Michael's a good guy. He's so obviously a sweet guy at heart. Talk to the crew, they'll give you another story, but as far as the actors are concerned, they never had a hard time with him. So he's just a scumbag to the people who...
To the people that actually make his shit work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The people who are really the muscle behind the operation.
Yeah. It's how you treat service workers. That tells people what kind of a person you are. So take that for what he's... take that for what it's worth.
Treat the janitor the same as you would treat the CEO. I feel like that's a good motto for life.
Yep.
The studio wanted this movie shot in Los Angeles. Somehow they wanted to do The Rock in Los Angeles. With only a handful of exteriors of Alcatraz and San Francisco to complete the illusion. But director Michael Bay refused, telling them, I got to shoot this on the island because this island is so fucking bitchin'. Direct quote from Michael Bay.
Wow.
I hate that guy so much, dude. I hate him. It took a while for Michael Bay to convince Nicolas Cage and Sir Sean Connery to go underwater while flames blasted above the surface at the tunnel scene.
Yeah.
But both actors eventually agreed. There are safety divers immediately outside of the frame during the sequence, but Cage said it was very terrifying, and Sean Connery was not happy about it. I mean,
yeah,
it works for the action, so
it's a cool shot.
It's a cool shot. This is a funny one. Nicolas Cage was concerned that he looked like a little Japanese schoolboy in his scuba gear, while the other actors all looked cool. Michael Bay admits to intentionally making him look ridiculous. I didn't really notice that.
Me either.
But apparently Nick Cage did.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense that he looks out of place amongst a bunch of Navy SEALs.
Exactly. Yeah. He should. The premiere of this movie was actually held in the rec yard at Alcatraz.
Really?
Nice.
Pretty cool that they did that. That Alcatraz would allow that, really. Because, I feel like the place is falling apart.
Yeah.
But it's also, it's a historical monument, and they make a lot of money off these tours. You wouldn't think that they would want to shut things down, but I'm sure that they got a huge
fat
paycheck.
payday, dude.
Yeah.
And finally, in 2016, a Chilcot report on Britain's involvement in toppling Saddam Hussein noted that one agent who had falsified claims about observing weapons of mass destruction in Iraq had based his description of them on the nerve gas missiles featured in this movie. So he gave that report to George Bush, and he was like, yeah.
They just showed him the rock and like, this is happening in Iraq. And he's like, we gotta get those weapons.
Gotta stop those terrorists.
Gotta take them down.
We'll take them down. Oh,
They got marbles full of green gas. Gonna kill us all.